Welcome back to Arena Football Talk. I'm your host, Matthew Jacobson. Let's talk about the Arizona Rattlers. So, 10 weeks have passed, 8 total games. It's a 16-game season now. We have a mid-season report to do, and let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, I'm going to get the results out of the way first. The Arizona Rattlers started their season on March 16th at Northern Arizona. They win that game. It was pretty close throughout most of it. The Rattlers edge it out 51-40, and to date, that is still the only game this season they've beaten a team that was technically 500, because Northern Arizona and Arizona were both 0-0 at that point. Then they come home, their first home game in the Glendale era, and they lose 45-43 after that to the Vegas Nighthawks, who are one of the two best teams in the league right now, not just the conference, in the league. They lose that by just 2 points after what would have been a missed field goal. You have that timeout that was awarded that Coach Guy called, and that one, the fact that that was as close as it was, showed that the Rattlers, they were starting to get injured at that point. Remember, Dalton Sneed gets injured pretty much immediately in that game against Northern Arizona, so then you have Garrett Kettle coming in. Garrett Kettle's playing down the stretch, and then Dalton Sneed comes back on the 28th against Jacksonville. Technically, he could have played against Iowa, but he comes back against Jacksonville. So they lose that by just 2 points. You're back to 1-1. They then go to the Bay Area, and they lose 47-41. It's a game that they were in for the most part, and the Bay Area Panthers are also one of the two best teams. They're the other 7-1 team right now, and the fact that they were able to compete there. In these first 3 games, the Arizona Rattlers did not lose by more than 6 points, and they were scoring at least 41 points a game. The defense, however, was giving up at least 40. So right there, it's just, they're playing fine, competitive football, and then they lose 55-45 at home against San Diego. It's also a good team, but they're only 5-3 right now. Yes, that's 2 games above 500, but that's a 1-game differential. If they would have lost that game, they're 4-4. Just like the Rattlers, and if the Rattlers win that game, they're 5-3 then. So it's a really, and that's not taking anything away from San Diego. It's just anything goes slightly different. This is a team that's kind of right around where the Rattlers should be. Then, after losing 3 games in a row and falling to 1-3, they go on a 3-game winning streak at Iowa on the 20th of April, hosting Jacksonville the 28th of April, and then going to Tucson to take on the Sugar Skulls on May 11th. Those wins being 49-47, 55-35, and 38-32, respectively. Iowa was winless. Iowa and Jacksonville were both winless when those games happened. Tucson had a couple of wins, but they were below 500. They still are, last I checked, below 500. I can fact check that for you. Right now, Tucson is 2-5. Tucson is 2-5, but luckily Iowa and Jacksonville both have some wins, so I guess it doesn't look that bad for the Rattlers. And I know it's a positive. 3-game winning streak, you're back to 4-3, you're above 500, you can build on that, and they were starting to get healthier. But from week 1 until, like, the Iowa game, it might have been the San Diego game, right around there, it was injury after injury after injury, but that was a massive win before a bye week after the Jacksonville game to go back to 500 and then go above 500 the next week. But now that you look back, and this concerned me at the time, I didn't get to watch that Iowa game. I did watch the highlights. You guys remember that? They only beat a winless team by 2 points. And yes, this is a professional league. No, even if you're a winless team and they've won 2 games since that game, so Iowa, like, they are professionals. They want to win. They're going to compete. But the fact that the Rattlers should be a lot better than them, but in reality we're only 1 win better at the time, that's something that was concerning me a little bit. And you're noticing, before that Jacksonville game, the Rattlers' defense was surrendering 40-plus a night. If you take away that 40 points against Northern Arizona, they were giving up 45-plus points. 45, 47, 55. They were giving up a lot. Defense had a lot of injuries. Yes, they still give up way too many points. They do, however, stop Jacksonville. Jacksonville, their season high was 35 points, and after the first half, they were on pace for about 48. The defense played a lot better in the second half. I think they played genuinely great in the second half, and had some quotes from Amari Alexander. You're talking about the defense kind of needs to stay together, and Theo Majet, Amari Alexander, and Rasheed Hodge, Glendale Community College alum Rasheed Hodge, were stepping up and playing these key positions. They get Dylan Winfrey back in the Bay Area game, which they lose 68-52. One play decided that game, yes, like it was that onside kick decision because the Rattlers couldn't recover that, and from that point, Bay Area just took all the momentum. But in reality, it was one score you gave up. They should have been able to bounce back, and they didn't. They did kind of keep pace down the stretch after a lot of the points were already in favor of Bay Area, and the defense wasn't stopping them. So they beat Tucson in a game that, in my opinion, was a little too close at 38-32 for a team that only had like 2 wins. And yes, Tucson was good last year. They're just not that good this year. And for a little bit of context, their center made like 3 or 4 really bad snaps, and the defense kind of got some free plays. They did play well second half of the Jacksonville, and overall in the game against Tucson, the defense was playing well, but these are bad teams. And that's something that we have to keep in mind, because when you're playing well against only bad teams, you got to ask some questions. Then you come up against Bay Area, like I said, lose 68-52. They're back to 4-4. In conference play, they're 2-4. On the road, they are 3-1. But asterisk, the only team that was above 500 when they played them, they lost to. They're also 1-3 at home. They are abysmal at Glendale Arena, Desert Diamond Arena. They are abysmal there, and the atmosphere just isn't the same. Rattler Nation is still Rattler Nation, but the Rattlers need to do whatever they got to do to kind of, whatever it is, to get this atmosphere back to where it needs to be. The next couple of games are going to be hosting Duke City tomorrow, hopefully today as you're watching this. Then you go to Jacksonville on June 1st, go to San Diego on June 8th, and those are a couple of games at Jacksonville. You have to win that game. Right now, over the next 3 games, the Rattlers, if they want to be in the playoffs, you got to win all 3. You got to show you can beat San Diego, and San Diego should be a team they can beat. They're a good team, but I think the Rattlers should be able to beat them. Even if it's close, Duke City, they should be able to beat. Let me go back to the standings real quick. They are the only winless team remaining. So far, the Rattlers are undefeated against winless teams, so positive, I suppose. Then you have at home against Northern Arizona, go to Vegas, host Iowa, host Tucson, end the season in San Antonio. Down the stretch, you got to play above 500 football. And right now, I don't know if they're beating Vegas. Maybe San Diego beats them again. Maybe San Antonio wins. So they need to go 5-3 down the stretch. You need to. Like, they're going to lose a couple of games, but 4-4 through the first 8 weeks, the first half of the season. The next half, you got to go 5-3. You got to go above 500. And it's so weird. Because if they go exactly 5-3, like I'm saying they need to, down this stretch in the last 8 games, and they lose to all of those teams that are good, and San Antonio's been pretty mediocre. They're picking it up lately. They were pretty bad. They're picking it up. Good for them. But if you still cannot beat the good teams, and look, Northern Arizona, they've shown they can beat. They need to continue that. When Northern Arizona comes into Glendale, they have to beat the Wranglers. That's a rivalry game. You got to win that one. But at the same time, Northern Arizona could beat them. San Diego could beat them. San Antonio might be able to beat them. I'm a little concerned. I'm a little concerned, and we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But I want to look at just a couple of league stats. So the Rattlers have the 7th ranked offense, so they are in the top half. And considering how good the offense overall has been, that kind of that checks out. Defense, however, they're 11th. They're ranked 11th in the league, and as a unit, it's just not playing good enough. Let's look at the passing. So Garrett Kettle has played 5 games so far. Lorenzo Brown Jr. played 3 when he was still with the team, and Dalton Snead has played in 4. So that's the games played for him. Garrett Kettle, 36 for 56, 415 yards. He does not lead the team in passing yards, though. That is Dalton Snead. 7 touchdowns. He's played serviceable. He's a backup quarterback. Lorenzo Brown Jr., he threw 3 interceptions on 44 completions, 72 attempts. Definitely was not as good as it could have been. I like Zoe. I think he was a phenomenal human being. It was unfortunately a bad situation because he threw 9 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He had pretty good stats overall. It just didn't work out with him because they were injured and they were losing games when he was playing. I think it was just a bad circumstance, not a bad Lorenzo Brown. I think Zoe's a good player. Dalton Snead, 45 for 66, 1 interception, 8 touchdowns, 488 yards. Zoe had 479 yards, by the way. So both quarterbacks had more passing yards than Garrett Kettle. Percentage, Garrett Kettle 64%. 68% for Dalton Snead, 61% completion percentage for Lorenzo Brown Jr. The quarterback play has been fine. He had a couple of key plays where Zoe would throw an interception and it wasn't advantageous. Overall, you've been getting solid quarterback play. Rushing, you have Shannon Brooks, 69 attempts, 285 yards, 13 rushing touchdowns. Jamal Miles, 4 rushing touchdowns on 108 yards. Garrett Kettle, 1 touchdown on 110 yards. Even Lorenzo Brown Jr. had a touchdown on about 58 yards. Carl Odom had 1 touchdown on 66 yards. And Dalton Snead, after a 3-touchdown effort in the last game, had 101 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. Again, offensively, no complaints. Receiving, Isaiah Houston, only 13 receptions, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns. Last I saw, he was injured and he's not currently on the roster. Glenn Gibbons Jr., been the best receiver hands down on this team. In 8 games, he's played all 8, 41 receptions, 488 yards, 12 touchdowns. His longest was a 33-yard touchdown. His average is 11.9. I think it's ridiculous. His receptions a game is 5. This dude is good for 5 receptions a game. Shannon Brooks, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jamal Miles, 32 receptions, 272 yards, 6 touchdowns. Corey Reed, who's had a couple good games, made a couple good catches, 103 yards, no touchdowns yet on 7 receptions. The newcomer, Jackson, 2 games, did not have a reception in that first game, but he had 5 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown in his last game. I think the offense has played well. You've had a couple circumstances, a couple situations, a couple individual games, or not games, individual plays where, yeah, that wasn't very good, but it's usually been a couple of plays, maybe a couple of drives. The defense, however, has mostly been bad, but I'm going to focus on the good. So I'm just going to give a couple of key stats. There have been 3 interceptions on the team so far. Connor Taylor, Dylan Winfrey, and Omari Alexander. So mostly the players that have been here for a little while. Sacks, we have about 6 total. So Pittman has a couple, Sims Jr. has 1, Harold Love has 1, Devontae Merriweather has 1. Forced fumbles, Devontae Merriweather as well as Harold Love have both forced a couple fumbles. You've had some individual good plays. You had a couple individuals play well. I think Connor Taylor, at least what I have noticed, Connor Taylor and Amari Alexander seem to be 2 of the better players more consistently when they are playing. It's when they are playing. Theo Majette as well. I forgot to mention Theo Majette because if we just bring up a couple of players here, Dylan Winfrey has played 4 games. Harold Love has played 4 games. So roster's had injury, it's had turnover, it's had you're not playing well enough, so we're going to replace you with someone else, so you didn't take advantage of your opportunities, we're going to bring someone else in. The defense has, I don't even know really what to say to that. The defense just hasn't been good enough, but it isn't even like the entire defense hasn't played together. A lot of these guys have played 6 or more games, just a handful of guys didn't, and I don't think a couple guys being out should derail the entire defense, and in some of these games it didn't. Early on, it didn't. Some of those games against the bad teams, it didn't. And obviously, you would hope a couple of injuries would not derail you against bad teams, but just a couple of things to point out there. I think this will help illustrate. So, the defense. I think it genuinely might come down to the Rattlers aren't that good this year. I think they're just a decent team. All right, so yeah, their offense ranks in the top half of the league. Their defense ranks in the bottom half of the league. And here's one last stat for you. So the Rattlers have scored 372 points. They've surrendered 367 points. So yes, they do have a positive point differential of about 5. Their points for per game, 46.75. Their points allowed per game is 46.12. They are giving up the same amount of points that they are scoring, and if your offense is really good and you're scoring well, but then you're also just giving all those right back up, not good. They've also taken more penalties than their opponents by about 5, but it seems like when they take penalties, they take some really stupid penalties at bad times, but hopefully this video gave enough general thoughts, because I kind of just wanted to have the stats up, kind of go through it, and just give my thoughts on what's been going on with this team throughout the year. And I think the conclusion came to me while recording this. This team is just mediocre. This team is just fine. And they have so many good players. So many, yes, likable players. I do get to talk to the players when I'm at the games. But even pushing that off to the side, there are some good players in this team. Most of the team is good. I'm just not sure what is specifically going on. It has to be an effort. There's no other real explanation because, yes, Coach Guy has made a couple of bad decisions. Calling the timeout against Vegas, the onside kick in the second quarter of the last game, hosting Bay Area, he's made a couple of bad calls. That's a couple of bad calls. That doesn't explain all of this. And to see a defense, while it's getting healthier, go from not being able to finish tackles to seemingly not even be able to get a body on the ball carrier, the defense has been the weak point all season. And unfortunately, that might be the reason why they don't make the playoffs. So there's still plenty of time. Again, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but I think my genuine feelings are this team isn't that good. They're just not, especially watching Vegas and watching Bay Area come in here and how well they played overall. Yes, that Vegas game was really close. Vegas still won the game. And Vegas has gone on to win 6 more games. And both Vegas and Bay Area are so far above everyone else in the West, as well as the couple of teams in the East that are far above everyone else. There's a couple of teams that are 6-2. So the Rattlers have a lot of ground to make up down the stretch to be fair, there's a lot of good veterans in this team. There is good leadership on the team. In the locker room, on the sidelines, they have everything they need. I agree with Zoe. One of the first things he said to the media when he first came here for that brief stint was that they had the pieces in that locker room to do something. They got 8 games left to show it. And you know what? This team last year, what was it, like a 8 game or 7 game, like something ridiculous, some long winning streak at the end of the year? They still have most of those same pieces. And if guys are still coming back and getting better, getting back into the groove, they still have what they need. I just need to see it. We all need to see it because so far, their best results were week 1 against a team that was 0-0. And yes, that team is now 5-3 in Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona is a good team. But since then, the Rattlers have not beaten a team that was 500 or above. And that's concerning for me. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Make sure to leave yours below in the comments. I genuinely do like to read the comment sections. And keep it right here, Arena Football Talk, for everything Arizona Rattlers and whatever else I can deliver.